Shalom. Would you please take your seats, please, so we can count open spaces.
Well, the seats in the back. And all these people are waiting outside.
You have 3 there? Are both sides of you open, Shalom? Okay. Yeah. 7. All right, I want to thank you for your patience here. We are starting a little late. There was a number of confusions about signing up to get in here tonight. Nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and proceed. I'm Scott Eicher. I'm the CEO of the Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank you for coming. As I always say in these things, it's an educated populace that makes the best vote, and that's why we have these forums, so that you can hear what our candidates have to say. The Ojai Valley Board of Realtors and the Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce are the sponsors of this event, and we are comprising the committee for the forum, Don Shook, Dale Hansen, and I. And we are the ones who selected 5 questions to give to each of these 5 candidates up here. They were given the questions a week ago. We will ask them, they'll each get a turn to answer the questions. They'll answer them one at a time. They'll go all the way through with each question. The first person will answer it first, the second person will answer the second question first, and so on, so that everyone has a chance to be the last person to talk. They will be given each 2 minutes for opening and closing statements. They will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and that includes questions from the audience. The way we're going to do questions from the audience is we've had people fill out cards, and Don Shook and Dale Hansen and I will go through those questions. Any that relate to questions that will be asked in the first 5 will be held back. We will collate all similar questions together and then bring them up here to the moderator. Brett Bradigan is our moderator. He had nothing to do with the questions that we thought up. He will have nothing to do with the timing, but we do have a timer back there, Dale Hansen, and she will have a card that is red on one side and yellow on the other. So candidates, when you see the yellow card, that means you have 15 seconds to finish your answer, and the red card means time is up, and Brett's not afraid to interrupt. So, Don Shook. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seats up front. Is that seat open over there? 7 seats up front. We have another one, 8 seats, 7 up front, 1 right here. So let's bring them in. Right up front, Mr. Teal.
I can't see with the glasses or without them.
That's the best seat right there. No, it's the best seat.
Hi, Betsy.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right up here, Linda. It's okay. I'm telling you it's okay. She can get the picture later, too. She'll have 4 more seats. We can bring them on in. Right up front, we have seats up here. One, 2, 3, 4. And if we could close those doors back there, the air conditioning does not work with the doors open. Come on, take your seat, please. All right. We're here. You've heard the rules as they are, and now I'm going to introduce our moderator, Brett Bradigan. Brett, come on up.
Thank you, Scott.
Let's go from one side to the other.
Yeah. Okay, first, let's give a big hand to Scott with the chamber, Dawn Shook with the Board of Realtors, Dale Hansen. Thank you for this. Tom in the back, our proprietor. He just informed me that we're at capacity. This is full house. Thank you. That's what makes this city work, really, the engagement. Just looking at some of the stats for election turnout in 2012, it was 82% compared to like 62 or 3 national. And even in the off-year elections, like 2010, 2014, it was over 70%. That's very impressive. So, yeah, give yourselves a hand. Yeah. One housekeeping item, cell phones. Please, if you could switch off your electronic devices. And we're going to start. At first, just to set the tone, I just was thinking of this really lovely story about John Maynard Keynes. It's lovely and short. And he was given a press conference after World War II at the Bretton Woods when they set up the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And this reporter jumped up and said, "Aha, you've changed your position. How do you explain your flip-flopping?" And John Keynes said, "Well, sir, I have new information. And you? What do you do with new information?" So with that, I'm going to ask our first question, and we're going to start over here on stage left. Mr. Gardner. First question, same question. We're going to go through there. Are you ready with the clock, Dawn? Dale? Okay, Dale's got her timer and her paddle.
Excuse me, Brett, are we going to do an opening statement?
Oh, sorry, yes, opening statements. Mr. Gardner, please.
Good evening. My name's Chris Gardner. I've lived in Ojai for 15 years and in Ventura County for 30 years. My wife, who's in row number 2, grew up in Ojai. Please stand. I don't know that we can stand.
No, I'm sorry. We're not going to be. It's the mic stands are there. If yeah, maybe if we can. Do you think that'll work, Scott? If they can come out to the podiums, promise not to trip over any wires. It's would be better for the people in the audience to see when people are talking when they're seated. If he comes up to the podium, then he'll be able to. Do you think we'll be able to maneuver the time with that? Okay, let's do it. Why don't you come up here?
Good evening. I'm the guinea pig. So, as I was saying, I've lived in Ojai 15 years. My wife grew up in Ojai. We raised a family here in Ojai. Kids went to both public schools at Nordhoff and to private schools here in Ojai. And I would expect we'll end up living the rest of our lives here in the town that we love. I'm a former engineer from Berkeley and a business leader. I had a successful career in technology. I was lucky enough to run a great company in Camarillo and work with talented people all over the world. So I know what it takes to solve tough problems. I've had a very limited public life outside of my career. I'm not a politician. What I am is an average citizen who's dismayed about how our government functions. Anyone who's dealt with the city or watched our city council knows that we can do better, that we need to do better. We need a council that works for the people and can solve problems, not create them. We need a council that will return phone calls and emails, even to those with whom they disagree. I believe I have the skills to make our city function more effectively. I will bring parties together to work on the issues that are important to us. That's how we got here. Those who came before us found the right balance. My goal, keep Ojai the place we love. I look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Susan Francina. I am a teacher and a prolific writer, and I had the honor of being your former mayor in the year 2000. I came to Ojai in 1957, so I've been here over 60 years, and I have seen all the changes, all the battles, everything that Ojai has been through. And I am mainly standing before you tonight. I want to earn my seat back, and the reason I want it back is because I truly believe that we've actually gone past the tipping point. We have to ask ourselves if we're going to keep going down that tourism road where we lose the small town community feeling that we've worked so hard for, or are we going to go in another direction? And that's why I'm here. I'm planning to put my writing skills to good use. I'm a very good communicator. I enjoy reading documents and then getting to the heart of the matter, communicating the heart of the matter. And I truly believe that Ojai it's a sacred, special, spiritual town that demands constant vigilance and protection. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Johnny Johnston, and I've come here this evening to assure you that I'm not looking for a political career. I told some folks the other day, it reminded me a little bit of the fellow who, this is the first time I've ever run for public office, and there's an old joke of a fellow who told the audience that and then said, I've never run for office before, I've stolen nothing, all I'm asking for is a chance. I have resided in the Valley for 45 years. I raised my family, my grandkids. I am concerned for the future of the town. I am offering, I believe, proven successful leadership, value-driven governance. I would like to promote transparency, collaboration, and inclusiveness. And I would like to express my appreciation to my opponents here for their work on the council, because they and I both know how tough the job is. This isn't about personalities, it's about leadership and direction. They have been working on this. It doesn't seem to be working, at least in the minds of my neighbors and me, to be solving the problems, and so I would like the opportunity to give it a chance. So thank you.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody. One of my early childhood memories was walking down El Paseo Road, where I grew up. We would pass the small cottages, what is now Clough Vista Park. My parents would take all of us, meaning the 5 of us, downtown after we ate dinner. And on a lucky day, we would be able to go play on that wooden playground. And on very rare days, we would get an ice cream cone from Ojai Ice Cream Shop. Our walks were full of arguing, laughter, crying, and joy. We felt safe and welcomed here in Ojai. I was lucky and I'm blessed to be born and raised in Ojai. And I mentioned this story because ever since I can remember, I grew up here. And I see the value in a small town. Fast forward, I now take my girls downtown. We eat dinner. We go to the newly constructed playground that was constructed by the community. And maybe we'll get an ice cream cone or a frozen yogurt. I have a stake in this community. I had a difficult choice to make this year because my term is up. I could have chosen to run for re-election for city council, but I chose to run for mayor because I believe that I could serve at a strong capacity. I did it as an appointed mayor, and I'm willing to do it this time around. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. As the current mayor of Ojai, I want to thank the Chamber and the Board of Realtors for sponsoring this event, and it's really wonderful seeing the turnout. This shows how much everyone's interested in this election, and without an active community, we can't really do our jobs very well. As a 33-year resident of Ojai, I have invested my time in our community, both through many volunteer organizations such as Rotary or the Pergola Reconstruction Committee, and also as a public servant, having spent many years on the Planning Commission and on the City Council. I am the only candidate you can evaluate based on my work and my leadership to the City of Ojai over a 16-and-a-half-year period, including 2 terms as your mayor. Over this period, I am proud that I have played an active role successfully preserving Ojai's small-town character by introducing our blighted building ordinance, by stiffening our no chain stores ordinance, and I am proud that we as a council have provided financial support for our cultural arts, our museum, and many other civic organizations. And I am probably the most proud that after a decade of deferring infrastructure maintenance, a much-needed plan for road maintenance has begun, through which we now fund infrastructure needs before preparing and funding our general fund budget. That hadn't been done before I got on the council. So with your help and your support and your vote, I will continue my service and leadership role as mayor to assure that we as a council and as we as a community work together to resolve the difficult issues facing us now and those that will face us in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, now for the questions that were prepared by the Chamber and the Board of Realtors. We'll start with Mr. Gardner. The consulting firm that audited the council and planning department recommended that the city should increase the department's work, space, improve its technology, and increase its staff. How would you work to make this happen?
For those of you who are not familiar, the Citygate report we're talking about generated the "We Suck" headline from our newspaper, Ojai Valley News. Tough words, paid a lot of money for some simple advice, and my concern is that so far we seem to be ignoring it. Let me give you an example. Theme number 1 in the report, that's out of 12 themes, was about how to set priorities. Very basic stuff. Yet, only a few months after we paid for that report, our city council gave this list of 47 priorities to our understaffed city management. Now, a wise boss once told me, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. What would you do with 47 of them? We have a city staff that wants to do a good job. They want to enjoy their work. They want to make their customers happy. They deserve to have that opportunity. So back to the question, Do we need more staff and more space? Maybe. Do we need better IT? Absolutely. But it's not the city council's job to count cubicles. As I see it, the job of city council is to hire good management, give them a reasonable set of goals, not 47, make sure they have the right tools and training, trust them, and hold them accountable to perform. That's how we will make the city function. The city will never function if we have a council that needs to delegate that work to a consultant to deliver cliff notes from a business book. Thank you.
So this is certainly the million-dollar question for this forum. And this first question is intimately connected to the second question dealing with operating revenue. So if I run out of time, I'll finish it with the second question. So I first I researched the question. Thankfully, there are YouTube videos, so I went back to the January 26th meeting. And as Chris pointed out, there were no surprises. Every city, every county in the country could use more money to increase workspace, improve technology, hire more staff. And in fact, if you did an audit of every household in Ojai, you'd probably get the same results. Everybody needs more staff to clean up, manage the pets and children, and more money to pay the staff. So anyway, it takes money to upgrade the planning department. We don't want to raise taxes, and we don't need to raise taxes. We already have way overly dependence on tourism. We don't want big box chain stores. So in order to implement the recommendations made by the auditors, we have to attract non-polluting, non-tourist-based business. And thankfully, we had a budget surplus this year, so we're not like in a houses on fire mode. But over the years, I want to point out that over the years, we've had several large non-tourist-based businesses that we failed to nurture and encourage. You know, the most glaring one is lynda.com. That was founded in Ojai in 1995, and she first had offices right in downtown Ojai on Matilha Street. And I don't know all the details of why she left town, but that would have certainly boosted our economy, and it would have helped us to, oh, is that the red thing? Okay, to be continued, to be continued. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm a little puzzled at the question because the report, as Chris said, was fairly simple advice that didn't necessarily require an outside consultant, but it was written 9 months ago, and I assume by now it was all taken care of. The answer should have already been given by the council. The what is the council's job. The how is the manager's job. Our manager left shortly thereafter, has been gone 4.5 months, and we haven't even started the recruitment. Plans and approval should be reflected in the current budget. It's not, I don't believe, necessarily a matter of money. It should be able to be absorbed within the budget. Whether we know it or not, we should know that Ojai has the highest per capita income in their general fund of any city in Ventura County. It's double everything but Port Hueneme and the city of Ventura. I've never managed a town where I couldn't find 10% that could be shifted. So if this hasn't been done yet and you elect me mayor, those things that need to be done will be done.
Mr. Johnson's correct in the how and what should be the council's responsibility. Now, I have a different take on this. It's unfortunate that our city manager did resign a month after this report came, but I have a different view. I've been on the council for 4 years, We've been working with this department, we've been working with staff to see what the needs are. Now, if you've been paying attention to city business, we've been going through some transition from city clerk to city manager to planning, to the community development department. And before this report came out, we were already in the midst of hiring new personnel, looking for assistance for our staff. But we gotta realize that if you go to any city, this department is the most challenging one to handle. No one likes to pull a permit. Anybody in the room like to pull a permit for a job? So it's natural that this department is going to be complained about constantly. But my take on it is that we have been doing already what the advice said. Yes, it was a simple report, but as council members and as mayor, we have to be able to evaluate what the city manager does and how it does. And we could give suggestions and we could give priorities, but it's ultimately up to the city manager to implement. And when we get a city manager, we will move on, and I believe that we've already taken positive steps to resolve the issues in this department.
One of the unfortunate things when people aren't actively involved in city government is they try to answer a question in a vacuum when they really need more information to be able to answer it, and unless you're living it every day, you really don't have that information. As far as Mr. Gardner's list of 47 goals for our staff, that is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. It doesn't work that way. We have a list of all kinds of goals, but we've never told the staff that they have to work on 47 of them, that's for sure. I mean, we have 47 goals from low priority to high priority in any city. But to think that we gave our staff 47 goals that they had to work on is just it's a naive way of looking at things. While the prior city manager was employed, the council approved the hiring of Citygate to be retained to perform a management audit in the community development department, because we were concerned that maybe we weren't seeing what was going on there and we might need some help to get it done. And that's exactly what we did. It was the city manager's responsibility to implement the recommendations, and he resigned. We've had an interim city manager, and we're taking steps to have a new city manager. We haven't neglected that. The council's role is to facilitate the necessary funding to implement the technology and the personal requirements, and to monitor its results through the city manager. However, many of those audit recommendations have begun to be implemented, including additional training for staff, counter handout materials, and we're making a change in the building official. Those are all recommendations and major recommendations that were part of that report. Now, the work certainly isn't done. We have more work to do, but we're implementing it as we can, and we have to get the job done for the city while we're doing it.
Thank you, candidates. Question 2, we're going to start with Mr. Blatz again. The question is, city operating revenue is highly dependent on tourism. Should the council form an economic development department to bring different clean industries to the city to develop a broader source of revenue?
This is a question that is a difficult one, because there's really only a couple streams of revenue that a city has available to it, like Ojai. One of the streams is our transient occupancy tax, which is our largest funding of our general fund. And of course, that's dependent on tourism. And that's the question. They're saying, what else can we do to generate revenues? Another part is sales tax. But the big sales tax revenue businesses are businesses that we don't want in Ojai and we won't have in Ojai. We don't want big box stores. We really don't want automobile dealerships. And those are the kinds of businesses that bring in a lot of sales tax. So we don't want that. So then you look at property taxes. Well, presumably a business could move to Ojai and maybe build a new building and generate some property taxes off of that. But we don't get all the property taxes. A lot of it's taken by the state and by the county. So there's very little that we can do. And then let's talk about the internet business. That's still in flux as to where internet businesses are being taxed. Or if you sell something wholesale, you don't collect any tax in the place where the business is. You wholesale it out and the taxes are collected wherever it's sold. And the same thing happens with internet-based businesses. So it's very difficult for our town, our city, to take a look and see how we're going to generate it. Even a business bringing in employees isn't going to do much because we don't get any employment taxes. So what we have to do is we have to think about what are we going to do if we want to generate additional revenues outside the transient occupancy tax. And one of the ones that I think we really need to consider is having a special sales tax in town. If we had a special sales tax of 0.25%, just on sales tax revenue from Ojai, and a great percentage of the sales tax that's being paid are from tourists, because that's who's here, we would end up having we would have a tax that the tourists would be helping to pay that would generate more revenues for us. Thank you.
Mr. Lara?
This was an interesting question for me. Should the council form an economic development department to bring different clean industries to the city? What is clean industries? To me, we have an opportunity to bring clean industries to the city. 4 years ago, I mentioned solar panels. We have a lot of sunlight. We could take advantage of this. I think that the city should look at ways to bring those clean industries here. Now, we are limited in land use. We have to look at our zoning uses for different zones of what's available and how we could possibly modify it. But creating a department for it, I'm not sure, first of all, if we want to add that list to a limited staff we already have. But I do think that it would be important to have soft involvement. So a hybrid of some type to bring clean energy into the city would be smart. And I'm talking about working with already local agencies such as the Economic Development Collaborative of Ventura County, programs such as HERO or PACE, or even the chamber here. The chamber has done such a good job establishing the TBID, the taxes to promote tourism here. So we have the ability to think outside the box in this situation, because I care about my environment. I care about my girls being able to live here in this town. So I want to promote clean industries here. I think that's something that we could take advantage of. And we have to work together with other agencies. We have to be willing to cooperate and collaborate.
The answer to the question in a word is no. You do not create a department just because you have a need. City managers in small towns are generally expected to have expertise in economic development, and I believe the city also sends money to the Chamber of Commerce, whose job it is to help with the economic development. I don't see any need to be having a half-cent sales tax. I don't think you have to work inside the city government to understand how these things work. It was the city manager's job to evaluate the department and not neglecting the city manager's position. We still don't have a recruitment going, and I received a call several months ago asking if I would do for the city what I did for the city of Ventura, which was to act as city manager at no cost to the taxpayers and help on the recruitment. No one ever bothered to call back on that, and the newspapers didn't bother to carry the story. So I suspect there's some other agenda, which I'm not yet clear on, that's going on. But I would say that a small town manager should be hired who has at least one or two other expertise in addition to being the manager. There should be financial budgeting experience, and there needs to be community development. We actually have a community development department. I don't know why we would have an economic development department with such few staff people. I think enough said.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with the points made by Johnny Johnson. The question is, do we need well, we do need to develop a broader source of revenue. Actually, I don't know if we even need to do that. Maybe we're good enough as we are. But this is a question that's always asked, ever since I can remember back 1994 at forums. And my point that I was making previously is that we absolutely need to nurture what we already have. If we look inside this community, we need to, you know, the point was made that different businesses don't generate the kind of revenue that tourism does, but that's not the only criteria. I think everyone here recognizes that. You know, quality of life is important. We are known as we have an international reputation as an art destination. We should absolutely be nurturing the artists and the writers in this community. There's just no question. And that, you know, that's non-polluting industry, right? So, you know, the real pressing issue for Ojai is not that it needs an economic development department or anything of that nature. What we need is a clear vision for the future. I don't believe that transient short-term rentals and the tax from that are going to save Ojai. We just need to face whether or not are we going to go further down the tourism, hotel, short-term rental, winery path and accept the negative consequences of that, or are we going to put in place stronger policies that support the fact that we are already good enough, just as we are? We need to work to preserve the quality of life for the residents of Ojai. I see. Thank you.
So there's been a lot of interesting issues talked about on this topic. I guess I'd just point out, you know, it's not just the city tax revenue that's dependent on tourism. Tourism currently represents also the majority of the local economy, you know, provides jobs and income for a lot of local residents. So we do have risk and we do need to diversify. And we have a great opportunity to do that, right? We've been fighting things like Weldon Canyon and the toll road for generations, and people have done that, worked hard to make this a very special place to live, one where people want to move to and they want to live here. We've avoided overbuilding, we have great recreation, great choice of schools, but we have very few businesses willing to invest here. Why is that? Well, historically, we really don't welcome businesses. Do we need a department to change that? Absolutely not, right? We have a community with a lot of experienced business owners. There's a room full of them right here, right? We can organize and leverage this expertise and make a difference. For example, I've recently helped the formation of a new internet startup in Ojai, a company called Desk Yogi. Some of you may know it. It's founded by Jackie Burge. It's focused on wellness. It's perfect for Ojai. They found it tough to find local talent. Jackie, the CEO, is a former employee at lynda.com, a very successful Ojai-born internet company mentioned by my new friend here, Souza. Lynda.com left 6 or 7 years ago because Ojai couldn't accommodate their needs. Well, with them left dozens, if not hundreds, of clean jobs that would attract the families that we need. We can't let this repeat. We've got to stimulate both the creation of new businesses and help recruit the young people needed to make those businesses thrive. Turns out, I think I know a little bit about both. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to mix up the order in which these questions are answered. This third question, we'll start with Mr. Johnston, work through the rest of the mayoral candidates, and then we'll come over here to Souza Francina for the city council candidates. So the question is, question number 3, what is your position on short-term rentals in the city of Ojai? Mr. Johnson?
Second only to the water problem. Short-term rentals have always been with us. Many of us have stayed in them and didn't even realize it. They have benefits for some, and the question is, at what cost and who benefits? Unregulated, they pose a threat to the nature of neighborhoods and community worldwide. It's not local. The introduction of technology is the steroid that's been interjected into the system, and government has had a horrible time trying to keep up with the problem. They are not legally permitted in this community right now, and yet they do exist and are spreading. I believe that our laws need to be sensibly enforced to create a chilling effect so the corporate investment, buying houses specifically for the purpose of short-term rentals, will stop while we have time to figure out how we deal with the rest of it. Proponents of change have a considerable burden, I think, they need to bear to help come up with those answers. Right now, it seems as though many proponents, or at least the technology people, are not really cooperating to solve it as much as feeling like they're not the ones that are to blame for it. Maybe they're not, but they certainly have accelerated it. Thank you.
If you followed the council meetings this last year, we had hours and hours of meetings dedicated to short-term rentals. And I have to say that my stand is still the same, and I support the current position that the city stands. Short-term rentals have not been allowed in residential areas and other zoning since forever. They've never been banned. What the question is being asked is there enough findings to change the current regulations of our zones to allow this type of business, either on residential, VMU, commercial, etc.? And as an elected official, you have to honor the codes that have been there. And you have to make sure that if you are going to modify or tweak anything, that the findings have to be way and beyond, because our codes for this town have done so well to keep Ojai and give Ojai the small town character it has today. So for me to even support this, I will need to find those findings. And we have the economy is up, our tourism is up. If you look at our budget, we have been doing good. So I stand firm to the decision that we as council members have made just to protect our zoning rights and stay as a small town.
My thoughts on this are pretty clear. Short-term rentals are not good for Ojai, regardless of whether they're regulated or not. I have reached this conclusion after hours and hours of public input and my own feeling that short-term rentals destroy the fabric of our neighborhoods. As your mayor, I've sworn to uphold the general plan and our municipal code, which does not allow them. And the council, in my opinion, correctly decided not to change the code based on what people were doing illegally. That's what we were asked to do, and we correctly decided not to do that. At some point, as much as we are dependent on tourism, this town can become overburdened with tourists. And if we allow short-term rentals, regardless of the zone, first of all, it's going to hurt the neighborhoods, and second of all, when is too much as far as the people coming into our community? Short-term rentals are going to exasperate that. So now, as I said, the council correctly made the decision to leave the existing law in place, and that is why it's time that we need to start enforcing it, vigilantly enforcing the regulations, the codes, and finding the people that are still violating it, which they are, and enforcing our laws. And that's why I am in favor of us, as we are now, the council has requested that some investigations be done into finding a third-party code enforcement organization that is strictly there to help code enforce against short-term rentals. And I'm hoping that we can find someone to do that, because it's absolutely essential that if we have this law, we have to enforce it. Thank you.
So the question is, what is your position on having short-term rentals in the city of Ojai? I want to first point out that when there were just a few Ojai residents renting out a room or a guest house for under 30 days with the homeowner living full-time on the property, this was not a problem. Nobody hardly noticed, you didn't notice it. So it's ironic, because the very people behind the infamous Plan Don't Ban initiative, by having multiple short-term vacation rentals and are turning whole houses located in residential zones into the business of vacation rentals, they've turned what was once a quiet mom and pop operation into, it's fueled, as someone else pointed out, by the internet, by Airbnb and various other types of, I don't know what the right word is. But I agree with the conclusions of the short-term vacation rental focus group. I'm in total agreement with the city's position on short-term rentals. They are an illegal business in a residential zone. I'm proud that our Chamber of Commerce opposes short-term rentals. That shows that they have the right, they understand the importance of maintaining our small-town character and integrity of our neighborhoods. How much time, where are you, Dale? Are you going to wave that red thing? Okay, okay. What this is really about, it's really a debate about our vision for Ojai's future. Should Ojai gradually be turned into a tourist town where the locals are forced out? The short-term rentals are just part of that trend. Thank you.
So I guess that I'm a supporter of local licensed and limited short-term rentals. What you may not know is that I am against unregulated STRs and the ownership of STRs by those outside the Ojai Valley. General plan stresses that Ojai is a community that must successfully blend the best of small-town lifestyles and the tourist economy. Dozens of other small cities have used regulated STRs to help create exactly that balance. And we had the opportunity, but we squandered it. 6 years ago, our council voted to suspend enforcement of STR rules to work on new regulations, partially to justify the changes in Libby Bowl. Unfortunately, they did nothing. Finally, this year, council ignored their own committee's suggestion to regulate STRs and chose to reinstate and increase enforcement. First turning a blind eye and then returning with a sledgehammer isn't leadership, it's dysfunctional. In response, a few of us, in Plan Don't Ban, raised a petition. And while the county validated that we had more than enough valid signatures collected in 2 weeks to get on the ballot, the city denied the petition on a technicality, on a format technicality, denying the citizens of Ojai the most basic right, the right to vote. So here we are, still debating the topic. Where should we be? Well, 6 years ago, we had limited the growth to licensed only short-term rentals, collected taxes. We, like so many other communities, would have avoided this mess and could be sitting in a pot between $1 and $2 million in tax revenue. Imagine what good we could do with that for funds of our parks, schools, and infrastructure. But it comes back to this, whether it's short-term rentals, walls, hedges, bowling alley, leaf blowers, cultural resources, council's not shown reliable leadership that people can trust, so debates never die. I'll work to get real input from the community on these critical issues and make sure City Council is fair and transparent.
Okay, question number 4. We're going to start over here with the council candidates and with Souza Francina. Question 4. And then we're going to work the other council candidate, and then we're going to start on this other end with Mr. Platts and work back towards the middle. Question number 4. What is your position on medical marijuana licensing?
I'm all for it. So I'm definitely strongly in favor of licensing. I see this as an urgent health and safety issue. There are hundreds of people in Ventura County who need safe access to medical marijuana. By regulating medical marijuana, it's obvious, if you think about it, the people who want to do this right can come out of the shadows without fear of being without fear of prosecution, and they can comply with environmental and safety standards. At least 25 states, is this okay, the height? Okay, sorry. Okay, at least 25 states and the District of Columbia have passed laws legalizing the use of medical marijuana. I applaud, I'm Dutch, I have I am, okay. I applaud Councilmember Bill Wyrick for taking the lead in forming a study group with the Ventura County Cannabis Alliance to draft a common sense ordinance to expedite the licensing of dispensaries. We are, and more important, the health and safety issue is the fact that we are in the midst of a well-documented opiate epidemic. People are dying from prescription opiates like OxyContin and Vicodin. Accidental death from opiate overdose is now the leading cause of death in the United States. And marijuana's pain management properties are well documented, and addiction experts are recognizing that marijuana is a safer alternative. The time has come for doctors, law enforcement, and policymakers to work together on this urgent health issue.
You'll get your chance.
That's what I'm afraid of.
So clearly, cannabis has valid medicinal uses. You know, it also has potential drawbacks, particularly for our youth. Personally, I'm fairly agnostic on this topic, but we all know it's easier to get a medical marijuana card than it is to get a handicap parking sticker. My daughter went to Humboldt. Everyone she knew had a card. So my biggest concern is what happens if Ojai becomes the only town from LA to Santa Barbara to legalize. How would that affect our town? In fact, we may be the only city in the county that has not already made a specific decision on cannabis. And now we're in a hurry to do something, expedite something before the election. Does this approach sound familiar with this government? I know Councilmember Wyrick formed a focus group some time ago, and August 9th delivered a term sheet to council. It's a detailed proposal, calls for changing our zoning codes, Mr. Lara, to allow cultivation of up to 10,000 square feet of manufactured dispensing and transportation. Looks like there's been an awful lot of work put into it, but there's no names on the term sheet, so I couldn't actually identify who wrote it. And there's virtually no information I could find on the Ojai City website. No notes from the focus group, no research, no polling, no minutes, no nothing. So I don't know where this came from. I would guess for the average citizen, there are a ton of unanswered questions. Bottom line, this is a big decision. We need a lot more community involvement and debate. It involves everyone before we take such an important step. At this point, personally, I can go either way. So let's have the debate before the decision.
I see. I'm trying to figure out how you transfer
You're welcome to go
Yeah,
first.
okay, Paul, let's do a duet.
I have no pride of ownership of the podium here. I have no idea what Mr. Gardner is referring to when he says, now we got to hurry up and do something before the election. That's news to me. I realized the importance of medical marijuana to our community when a co-op that we had in town was closed. And there was a tremendous outpouring of need and an outcry over that closing before the city council during one of our meetings. There's no question that medical marijuana has its municipal uses, and there's no question that there's a vast group of people in our community that rely on medical marijuana, and when that co-op was shut down, they had a heck of a time finding the medication. As the mayor, as a councilman, as an officer of the city, I'm sworn to uphold the laws of the state of California. And currently, the state of California allows for medical marijuana dispensaries. And the issue becomes that we can't deny it because licensing is approved. It's already approved. And I've sworn to uphold the laws of the state of California. So I can't say, well, I'm against it, so I'm not going to allow it. It's not happens to be my position, but I wouldn't have the luxury if it was. So it permits the licensing for medical marijuana. So what's important for us to do is to begin immediately enacting regulations within the city of Ojai with regard to medical marijuana facilities so that we can ensure that the health, safety, and welfare of our community is protected, because there are concerns from law enforcement that there could be some other forces infiltrating the legal dispensaries. So we have to work together. This is a community that needs medical marijuana, and we just have to make sure that we do it right, we regulate it properly, and we keep our health safety issues in forefront.
I think this topic really makes people happy and anxious. I want to thank, first of all, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick for taking the initiative and really creating a study group. A study group that gives us information and research, because I, like Mr. Gardner said, changing the zoning law, really have to do my due diligence in order to really be able to see if I want to change those. But we cannot ignore the research of what medical marijuana does and the value that it has. Now, it does have some negative impacts on the community, and I'm sure that we are going to have to look at that. It's our duty to look at that before we implement any ordinance. We also have to be aware that there is a proposition right now, 64. So this is not gonna be done before the election, and I hate to say it, it's probably not gonna be done in 4 or 5 months. It's gonna be a process, and we're gonna be engaging with the community. But I have an open mind about it, and I definitely wanna stick to what the research shows and implement some sound regulations if, as a council, we decide to allow this use.
Let's roll.
I paused to compensate for my early appearance of eagerness. I was not eager to answer the question. I was eager to get it over with. I have always, at least as long as I've thought about the subject since college, believed that marijuana should be decriminalized. That's a whole different subject. There's no doubt about medical benefit based both on research and actually members of my family. I'm not quite sure whether they went to a dispensary to get it, but they didn't have any trouble. I believe it is between a doctor and a patient. I believe the state law, under the law, it's going to be 2018 before local rules and the state rules come together. So I'm not sure how that exactly works. We are sworn to uphold the laws of the state of California, and we're also supposed to uphold the laws of the federal government, who thinks it's illegal still. So basically, I think this is a dilemma, and that we should be planning for what appears to be inevitable. But I would point out to you that Prop 64 is, if passed, and it's predicted to pass, I don't know that it will make a lot of this moot. On the other hand, if it doesn't pass, we should be prepared to deal with the medical aspects of it. My concern really is about youth. And I have family members who've had adverse results from having experimented too early in life with brain development. So I say it's a dilemma. I'm not sure where I am on it. I'm trying to evolve. I suspect that, like a lot of things that are happening, the events are overtaking me in life, technology and marijuana.
Okay, now for the fifth and final question, prepared question, and then we'll have a very short break and organize the questions from the audience, which will be answered by all the council. Questions directed personally. We recommend that you ask the candidates your specific questions to them. Okay, question number 5. We're going to start with Mr. Lara, then Mr. Blatz, and then Mr. Gardner, Ms. Francina, and then Mr. Johnston. We'll work our way. So that way, everybody has a chance to start first and finish last. Okay, Mr. Lara. What should the city's role in addressing the valley's water problem? What should be the city's role in addressing the water problem?
There's no doubt that water is a necessity wherever we're at, and we are in a severe drought. Now, what should the city play? I think that we should stick to what our jurisdiction is allowed to do, which we're starting to do. Councilmember Clapp, Councilmember Haney, and Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick have already started advocating for smart development regulations, which I absolutely support. Looking at possible moratoriums, that's going to be a little bit difficult for right now, just because we're a no-growth community. So what does that really mean for the city? Are we building new developments, No, we're remodeling. Could be some regulations that could actually improve capturing rainwater onto your property instead of putting a moratorium on all the development. So I think sticking to our police power is a smart move. The other concern that I have here is that there's so many agencies out there, local, regional, statewide, that have different rights and authority on water use. I think it's important to start collaborating with these different agencies instead of reinventing the wheel. And I really believe that Councilmember Haney has, and Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick has taken that lead. So I would support adding resources to collaborating. I wouldn't really support starting our new group, doing our own summits, because this is not going to be fixed just by the citizens of Ojai. This is going to be fixed by everyone that lives in this valley and in this local area. Thank you.
One thing for sure is that the water issue, water is the lifeblood of our economy, as it is with any community. And without it, we're going to dry up and go away. And the other thing that's clear is that conservation is not going to do it. We can't solve our water problem simply by conserving. So what the city should do is we need to urge the Casitas Water District to participate in committing to the infrastructure necessary to connect to the State Water Project, which the citizens' rate base has already paid, so that if local Casitas water and our underground water basins are depleted, and what is available from the state project will remain viable and keep water coming to our community. Casitas has had the right to connect to the State Water Project for some time. They just haven't done it. Ojai is totally dependent upon water from Lake Casitas and from our aquifer. And if neither one of those sources are able to provide us with water, we're not going to have any water. Water is a precious resource for our city, and we need to work with the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency, which I sit on. It's more usually called the OBGMA, to assure that our aquifer is not being overly depleted by private wells. Ojai must seriously consider the cumulative effect of wells that are taking water out of our aquifer before approving any more private wells, and we should insist that the OBGMA not approve any wells. It's very important that too much rainwater is being allowed to go into the ocean. We need to begin immediately working to enact water-wise building codes that will include the capture of rainwater so that it can be returned to the aquifer. And that's what we're going to begin working on, is some water-wise codes.
Spring chicken. So first off, I'd agree with everyone here that obviously we can't ignore the problem, right? We can't just say we don't have authority over this, so we won't get involved. We've got to demonstrate some leadership. And I'm actually very pleased. I've watched a lot of the council meetings in the last few weeks, and I'm pleased to see council has started to really dig into this and discuss this in the last several meetings. So I'd push efforts on 4 fronts. Number 1, conservation. We need better outreach to the community on how critical our problems could become. We need clear and visible metrics on a roadmap on water usage and progress, just like the thermometer they put up for the hospital at the main intersection in town. The Ojai Valley News just added some of this to their front page. It's a great start. We need more. Give the people the right information and they'll do the right thing, right? We can rely on them. Second, we should consider incentives for turf conversion, local water storage, gray water systems, etc. Similar to solar panels, these are big investments where a little help from government could make a big impact. Even fast-tracking permits, waiving permit fees, providing drawings and designs for systems could make a big impact to the small homeowner who wants to make a change. These infrastructure changes would pay back forever. Third, we need to be looking into county, state, and even federal assistance if our problems get a lot worse, which could happen very quickly. I'd call Flint and ask them what they did when their water went bad one day. We've spent $70 million on state water rights that have never been used. We need to work with Ventura to get that allocation back into Lake Casitas. And finally, I've been impressed by the response of the private community and groups such as the Green Coalition and the new Ojai Water Trust. As government, we need to find ways to empower and leverage these experts that have always done so much to make Ojai what it is.
Well, I'll start by taking the opportunity to make sure everyone knows that we have a regional drought summit. Out with the drought. It's drought, isn't it? On Thursday, September 22nd at 6 p.m. And I support the points that were already made. I was at the city council meetings when Russ Baggerly and numerous other community water experts spoke. And to me, it's clear that while we're in a stage 3, out with the drought. I keep mispronouncing it as a drought. And it could go to 4 and 5, which means that you can no longer water outside. You have to carry the water. You'll finally be able to, you'll be schlepping your buckets of water from your shower to the plants outside, which of course we should be doing already. But what I want to say is, I like the idea that Peggy Lacera presented at the city council meeting of having, I guess you could call it a water czar, a point person, because I think the situation is serious enough that there should be someone who knows what all the different agencies are doing, who's clear that we need to work on at least 3 different levels. You know, there are the state and county agencies, but we also, I do believe that conservation has an important place, because eventually we have to, you know, we should not dismiss it. I don't think that was the intention. And even symbolic conservation, it starts with that. So on that note, I happened to be, I had breakfast at the Ojai Valley Inn on Sunday, and I felt like I was in Ireland or Scotland. There's no drought, unless you look really far in the distance. It's totally green there. And I've been in other areas in Ojai where it seems like we're in a different part of the world. So I think that makes, it's confusing to people, because we're asked to let our lawns grow dry. I have so much more to say. Don't wave that. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. But we're headed in the right directions. The city's on the ball.
Water is the #1 reason I am running for mayor. It is the #1 priority. It is what they call an existential threat to the valley, and that's not about our health, you know, brushing our teeth and showering. In Ojai, we consume probably less than 5% of the water used in the valley, and of that, about 80% we put in our yard. So there will be enough water for brushing our teeth. The trouble is there's not enough water for the oak trees and for the orchards and the way we use water. And if that water table drops below a certain level, those trees will not come back even if the rain does. And if those trees die, we're living in a tinderbox. So we should think about that, and we should also think about the economy and what it will do to the economy of the valley if water runs out. Okay, I believe in the old Gandhi thing of be the change you wish to see in the world. We start in Ojai, we do all the things everybody's talked about. We harvest, we reuse, we recycle, we use our planning function. We put no new straws into the punch bowl until the punch bowl gets replenished. That has to be the... Okay, we are not in this alone by any means. Collaboration, cooperation are essential. That is what I think that distinguishes me as a candidate. I believe I can be the leader that Councilman Haney and others have been asking for until a better one comes along. My experience and background, including working with our partner down at the bottom of the grade, the city of Ventura, in 2012 when I managed the town, I came up with the novel idea of connecting the planning decisions with the water department. We must consider the options of resupply from some other source and the implications of that additional supply. It cuts both ways. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those are the prepared questions. If you just give us a couple minutes, Scott will come up. We'll sort through questions from the audience. We will take questions from the audience until 8:45, and then the candidates will each have 2 minutes for closing statements. Well, this should go through Scott.
Get you to take your seats again, please. We'll get back to the questions and the answers from the candidates. We all take our seats now? Just knock them down, Chris. They'll get out of your way. Plenty of chairs open right up front here. If everyone will take your seats, please. We would like to address as many questions as we can from the audience, so we'd like you to all take your seats, please.
Okay, we're going to get through as many audience questions as we can. The candidates, same format. 2 minutes. I'll ask a question. Each of them will have a chance to answer within that 2 minutes. Okay, we're going to start with the council candidate side. Mr. Gardner, start with you and then work our way across stage left to stage right. How important to your agenda are safe streets and the designated bike paths? Bike paths, safe streets.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I use the bike paths all the time. Live down near the inn, and my wife and I probably are on the bike path multiple times a day. We typically walk actually in and around the city. We don't drive unless we're carrying something in the car. So we're a big user of that. We're a big user of the trails. So, you know, I haven't been personally involved in moving that stuff forward, but it is definitely, I think, one of the most attractive elements of the city of Ojai. And again, one of the things I love about this town is that many of these things you do not have to drive from a government perspective. There are so many strong local organizations that want to make a difference. What I would do is figure out how those, what those folks wants to do and make sure government just gets out of their way.
You want me to read the question again? Under what circumstances do you think a council member, oh, sorry, wrong question. Okay, goodness. Okay, what is your view on safe streets and bike paths? Safe streets and bike paths.
Well, most of you know that's my favorite subject. I was told not to talk too much about bicycles. But some of you may recall, when I served on the council from 1996 to 2000, I took the lead in helping Ojai to pass its first bicycle pedestrian master plan. It actually should, oh, thank you very much. And fortunately, there are a number of, there's a new Ojai Bicycle Coalition. I started one as well. And their plans for Ojai are amazing. They just want to do demonstration projects. I want to be on the council so I can support their efforts. I do have a car now, but I thought it was important back in the reason I have a car is because I have rescue animals. Otherwise I would just bicycle I'm from Holland, we bicycle everywhere. Well, while I was on the council, that's still my primary mode of transportation when I don't have to schlep my animals. But I think it's very important that council members lead by example. I think every single council member needs to ride their bicycle so they can see that even after 20 years, there's not enough bicycle parking. I can tell you all the spots that we still need it, and that's like your most basic. We absolutely have to have safe routes to school. It's a shame. And The reason that we don't have that, we ended up with these kind of hokey sharrows, but the reason we don't have it was because at that point in time, 3 of the council members voted against bikeways on Grand Avenue. They felt car parking was more important than the safety of our children, and I am of a completely different mind. Thank you.
If you talk to me long enough, you'll think I'm Forrest Gump. I was city manager when we designated the first bicycle paths in the city of Ojai and put up the redwood signage back in the 70s. I was involved with Rails to Trails, acquiring the first section of the old railroad right-of-way between Libby Bowl and the lower part of Libby Park. And by coincidence, in 1998, I was the director of the county park system when we joined the continuous bicycle trail all the way to the beach, where we joined it and drove the spike in the ground down at Foster Park. So I think it's a great thing. I use it now in my, well, I used to be in triathlon, and then I got smarter because of a number of incidents. So I walk a lot, and you'll see me around town, mostly on the bike path.
Mr. Johnson, I appreciate you making those trails and everything, because I was a cross-country runner, and if you ran with me, you probably thought of Forrest Gump too, so. We had a great coach, by the way. Coach Reeves really taught a lot of his students about discipline. This is something that I truly support. Right now, I sit on the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and we do look at active transportation, which is either biking, walking, looking at our infrastructure to really develop our cities and be able to even increase our walkability or rideability or runability, I should say. So, and then I also sit on the Southern California Association of Governments, and some of their subcommittees advocates for this type of infrastructure. And being a newly appointed member in that agency, I have used some of their resources, and I have interacted with Complete Streets, which is very active, and using their Go Human campaign. So I think that I've shown already support for this. I want to keep improving. Obviously, we need to be smart about changing our infrastructure. There are grants out there already that we've qualified for, and we are looking still on Grand Avenue. I have girls that go to school, and actually Sousa would be kind of proud because I've signed up to see if we could do a little mock trial of a safe route to school to ride with my girls and neighborhood kids. So we are in the process of looking at all this, and I do support active transportation.
Bicycling is an integral part of life in Ojai. There's lots of people that ride bikes. And one of them that's more knowledgeable than anyone is right here with Sousa. And a lot of times I've relied on her to give me information about what needs to be done in terms of the viability of bicycle riding throughout town. We do have what's called a Complete Streets Committee. The Complete Streets Committee actively works on things such as bicycle paths and things like that. I sit on the board of Gold Coast Transit, and we have made arrangements so that more bicycle racks on buses can come up to Ojai, because Ojai is one of the favorite places for people to come to ride their bikes. I think we really need to look at Grand Avenue, because that is one of the areas where we, particularly on the south side of the street, cars are always parked in those sharrows. And it's very dangerous to ride a bike on Grand Avenue because of that. I really think it's time that the city takes a look at putting in bike lanes there, and I don't think I'd get any problem with Sousa and the way that she thought it. But back, there was a time when, you know, people thought that Grand Avenue was supposed to be more for cars and parking and things like that. But to get cross town now, we really need to have a safe bike path. And I think Grand Avenue is the perfect place for it. So I would be supporting that through the Complete Streets effort, and I would welcome anything that came before the council, and I would even take the lead on it to see if we can't look at putting a safe bike path, particularly on Grand Avenue.
Okay, next question from the audience. We're going to rotate to start with Mrs. Francina. And the question is, under what circumstances do you think a council member should recuse himself from a vote, him or her, should recuse themselves from a vote?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is if there's a financial conflict. I don't know, I'd have to think of some other, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but I have a minute and a half to think about it. I would, seriously, financial conflict, if issues, and that is how it goes. Council members do recuse themselves if there's a financial conflict. So if you consider the implications of that, I think that's appropriate. Thank you.
Forrest Gump again. When I managed the LA Superior Court operations, I used to teach ethics, and we made the point to our employees that the reason people come to court is because they believe they're going to get a fair shake. Otherwise, they settle their differences in the street. The important point that we always made was it's not just to do the right thing, it's to be sure that you have an appearance of also doing the right thing. It's a matter of appearance. So if you have an actual conflict of interest, you certainly should recuse yourself. But if there's going to be an appearance and a question about the judgments you're making that will taint the decision of the council, I think you should also recuse yourself. The courts have been fairly clear that you do not have to recuse yourself even with a financial interest if the council is unable to reach a decision without your vote, and that would be questions of quorum. But in most cases, it should be pretty straightforward. Don't do it if it's wrong, and don't do it if it looks like it's wrong.
I agree with the two previous speakers. If you have an appearance or financial interest, you got to recuse yourself. I've done it in the past, and I think that it's the right thing to do.
There are some very specific instances in which councilmen have to recuse themselves. One has already been said, if you have a financial interest. The other is if you own property within 300 feet of a proposed project, you can't rule on that. There's a presumed interest there. There is an ethical obligation of us all to do what we think is correct. And if we have any inside us legitimate reason to believe that we can't make an impartial decision, then whether it's an actual conflict or not, we need to recuse ourselves. But I'll tell you, the question just recently came up for me, and it was where I had to decide whether I was going to recuse myself over the Taramina vote to become a historic district, because my son was representing the opposition to that, and they were the appellants. And many people thought that I should recuse myself simply because my son was on the side arguing in favor of it not being a historic district. And I had to think about that. I had to think about it because I am very cognizant of the appearance of impropriety or the appearance of a conflict. But I didn't have it inside me that I felt it was a conflict. I was not swayed whatsoever because my son was going to be arguing on the other side of an issue that someone else was going to be arguing about and that I had to make a decision on. And I'm elected to make tough decisions, and I'm elected to make important decisions in this community. So I didn't recuse myself. And as it turned out, based on the public hearing, based on all the information that was given to us at the decision-making process, I found against my son and his position. But I could have just as well gone the other way if I felt that I was swayed that way. But I was not feeling as though I had to go one way or the other. I felt my obligations to the citizens, that I was put into the position, and it was a very important decision, and I felt it was my obligation to make that decision.
I guess I'd agree pretty much with everything that's been said here. For those who asked the question, I would probably refer you to the FPPC website, Fair Political Practices Committee, I believe it's called. So there's obviously a ton of government regulations about conflict of interest, et cetera. We all, when we run, are required to file what's called a Form 700. It's a public document. You can go and see what potential conflicts that we may have, and the government has a few ideas of what those may be. So that's all public information. And there's a whole website that describes what those potential conflicts might be, how you should deal with them. There's even free advice you can get from their lawyers on that. So I think this is something that we all should take very seriously. And I think everyone does. I mean, everyone who's got to make a decision requires the trust of the people who are out there. And, none of us can do anything that's going to violate that trust. So if you're really interested in the answer to that question, do some research on that website. It's a very good one.
Thank you. This question, we'll start with Mr. Johnston and then work its way back around. Okay, what are some ways the city council can protect Ojai's housing stock? Protect our housing stock.
That's a really good question. I guess the one that comes to mind, and I know there's a dispute over it, but it's the whole issue of the short-term rental. When a short-term rental is being used, that takes something out of the inventory. It may not be, it's not necessarily the cause of our shortage, but when we are a no-growth or slow-growth community, we have limited housing. You want to keep the houses, I think, for the residents. On the other hand, if there, were to be a permitted use, that the house, like down on Ojai Avenue, that's in a commercial district and is used for office space or veterinary, there's not a lot you can do. You either expand the inventory by building more, which is not a really great idea, and as I said earlier, I don't want any more straws in the punch bowl. So then you have to protect the inventory that you've got, which is not to have it converted. I don't know what else I might say about that.
Our zoning codes, I think, already do a great job at protecting our housing stock. If we were to change them, for example, like Mr. Johnson, and we have already talked about vacation rentals, short-term rentals, then we are endangering our housing stock. But I think that that's really the only thing, is uphold what we have right now to protect our fabric of our community, and be smart about it. I mean, be smart about it if we are thinking about diving into uses on different zoning, then we got to make sure that we're protecting our citizens before we do anything drastic.
When I think about protecting our housing stock, I really think about protecting our rental housing stock, because our housing stock in and of itself, while some of the houses are threatened by the internal forces of short-term rentals, we need to put into place, and we have, some real incentives to legalize second dwelling units, to increase our rental units. And we need to rely on our zoning code to really, particularly in our residential areas, to protect our housing stock. I'm not really sure what the question, whoever asked the question, was really getting at, because the protection of housing stock can have a lot of different meanings. Does it mean that you want to protect the housing stock that we already have from some sort of takeover by people that want to use them for short-term rentals? And we have taken steps to do that by beginning to enforce short-term rentals. I think that the protection of our housing stock in Ojai and the upgrading of our housing stock in Ojai is extremely important, because we're not having any new housing stock built in Ojai for the most part. So what we have to protect, and we have to maintain it. And we have to look to the future on new things that we can do to make our housing stock even more viable and more environmentally viable and sustainable. And we can do that through sustainable building codes and things like that. I think that's the way we protect it, because we have to look to the future, and we have to look to the future for the protection of the housing stock. We just can't have these external and internal forces trying to take these out of what is traditionally known as residences. And we need to put some sound business and community thought into how are we best going to be able to put new building codes in place for sustainability. And I think sustainability is what we really need in order to protect the housing stock into the future.
Yeah, housing stock is certainly a two-edged sword, right? There's a lot of people that talk housing stock, talk affordable housing, declining enrollment in the schools, that kind of thing. And, these are all symptoms of a lot of great things that were done 20, 30, 40 years ago to control growth here, right? We've done such a wonderful job not letting this turn into the San Fernando Valley that we now have a lot of demand and not a lot of additional stock. A couple things I think we ought to consider. I think it was 20 or 30 years ago when the VMU was created, and VMU took a ton of affordable housing potentially out of our stock for residences, right? And we ought to consider, is that VMU district the right size? Should it be smaller than it is today? That's been a discussion topic. Should there be limits on what density we have in VMU? The conversation on short-term rentals is definitely impactful. There's been a lot of debates on the numbers. There's approximately 3,300 units of housing in Ojai. About 1,600 are rentals, and probably 20 or 30 of those are short-term rentals that could be converted or have been now converted to long-term. So it's a small number. It'll be a temporary effect, and we can debate whether it's a real impact or not. The other thing I would look at is the challenges that anyone faces in terms of not only new building, for example, trying to put an additional guest house on your property, but also converting existing ones to legal and building or modifying new ones. It is very tough to get things through our city today, right? I've watched people at the office with reams and reams of plans trying to get a building that is there made legal. We got to make this simpler for folks.
So first I want to address what my opponent Chris Gardner said about village mixed use. My understanding is that is live-work. So I didn't understand, I guess we can't have a debate, but I don't, to the best of my understanding, village mixed use does not decrease our housing stock, unless of course it's converted into a short-term rental. You might be interested in the statistics. Those of us who have been tracking short-term rentals in Ojai have found approximately 285 short-term rentals in the valley. 77 of those are the current figures, of those are within the city limits. More than 77 is our figure, and that is I'll give you the rest of the figures. More than 80% are whole house listings. They're not the elderly making ends meet. This data comes from Airbnb's very own database called AirDNA, if you can believe that. And that's you can check these statistics for yourself. And these numbers are verifiable by other outside sources. The other, I don't know exactly what the questioner was getting at, but I'm a renter. I know that it took me about a year to find an affordable rental in downtown Ojai that allowed me to have my dogs. But now we're looking at creative ways to provide sustainable, smaller dwellings. The Planning Commission recently approved taking a look at tiny houses. And so there's many creative ways to provide more housing for people with less impact. You can, there's just so much, there's a wealth of information about that. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're running out of time here, so that'll be it for questions from the audience. Again, the candidates are making themselves available long after this event. Specific questions and issues, feel free to contact them. So, we're going to start with the first person, or the first person last time is going to be, we'll start with Severo Lara, Mr. Blatz, Mr. Gardner, and then we'll finish with Mr. Johnston. Yeah. Well, this is the procession, the order that we're going. Yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I do want to thank the Chamber again and the Real Estate Agency, and then also my opponents, and good luck to the council members for this forum. But during my past 4 years of service on the City Council, I've worked to bring additional perspectives to the issues that are in front of the council. A younger voice, a family voice, a voice of a small business owner, and that of an Ojai native. I believe a diversity of backgrounds strengthens our council and lends additional perspectives and a more comprehensive understanding of the issues of concern our community faces as we work together to solve them. While Ojai elected mayor will not have the sole authority to change policy, the mayor will chair the council and set the tone. As your mayor, I pledge to work tirelessly to ensure council members, staff, and the public are heard, working together and moving forward. During my term as your appointed mayor, I set the tone of cooperation, of thinking outside the box, but sticking to our values. I hope to continue that work as Ojai's first elected mayor, and I'm asking for your vote November 8th. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank the Chamber and the Board of Realtors and everybody that's here. I hope everybody's learned a little bit of something about the candidates. I just want to say how truly fortunate I've been to be the mayor of this wonderful city for 2 terms, and your current mayor. And I feel an obligation and a real responsibility in that position. And that position does hold a leadership role, a special leadership role, when it comes to representing the city, when it comes to ceremonial duties that are responsible, that the mayor is responsible for attending, a certain leadership role in the council, because the mayor has to look at has to manage the affairs of that city during that meeting and make sure that everybody in the audience is heard, everybody is respected, and everybody walks away from a city council meeting when a decision is made feeling as though even if they are on the other side of the case that we have ruled on, that we have found opposite to the way that they felt, that they've been given the respect that they deserved and that they were heard. And the mayor in managing that meeting has to assure of that. The mayor in managing that meeting has to have a leadership role to be able to coordinate the public input and bringing it back to council and assisting and facilitating the council's deliberation over a topic, so that when all is said and done, the council as well as the public believes that everybody has been heard, everybody has been respected, and the council has deliberated and come to a decision based on all the facts. Now this is my second time as mayor, and I can tell you that if I had been put into the responsibility of mayor the first night I was on the council, I would have been totally lost. Even though I had been two-time chairman of the planning commission. So what I want to say is that it's been an honor to be your mayor. I would appreciate continuing to be your mayor, and with your support and your help and your vote, I look forward to being able to serve as your mayor for an additional 2 years. Thank you very much.
So I'll start with some thank yous as well. First off, I'd like to thank my wife, Lynn, who brought me to Ojai. And I'd like to thank Brett, who I think did a great job tonight. The other candidates, and especially everyone in the audience for investing their time for coming out tonight. And it is an investment. It's a big investment for all of us. Our city's facing some serious challenges. We've talked about water problems, our tourist economy, and the functioning of City Hall. There are others. But I know with the right leadership, these problems will be solved. But what we can't do is let these problems divide us. So to me, that's our biggest challenge, to navigate these waters together as a community, to find compromise, and to respect each other through the process. Because in the end, really the only thing that will keep this little town, the place we all want to live, is by working together. And that's why I ask for your vote. Thank you.
I too applaud all the candidates. It takes courage to stand up here. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Those are candidates for mayor. Before I forget, on your way out, I hope you'll take some of my campaign material. There's 2 pieces. And I want to thank the people that stapled this together for me. Let's see, in the year 2000, while I was mayor, I wrote an editorial that is, I feel, more relevant today than it was then. And there's a copy of the editorial. It's called "Ojai is Still a Place That Uplifts the Spirit." I'll just read one paragraph. In a more enlightened era, a place as beautiful as Ojai would have the same level of protection as a national park. Its mountains, creeks, fields, and groves would be regarded as a treasure that should be preserved and protected for future generations. Our valley would be regarded as holy, as a healing place. Thankfully, the Ojai Valley is still a place that uplifts the human spirit and nourishes the soul. At least for us, Ojai is still Shangri-La. We owe a great debt to all the concerned citizens and elected officials who made the critical decisions that allowed Ojai to remain a small town. The Ojai Valley has maintained its character over the years by making it tough on the forces of development, blocking freeway proposals, preventing lot splits, limiting chain stores, taking a low-keyed approach to tourism. We shouldn't blow this effort by promoting ourselves nationally and internationally to the point where we feel that we need to open up our neighborhoods to commercial activity. Thank you.
I want to thank Scott, Brett, all of you folks who made this possible and stayed awake. That's good. A point I want to get back to on issues of leadership in the water problem. I did mention the idea of importing water, which is something that's going to have to be seriously considered, but I also want to emphasize the impact that that has. Infrastructure, whether it be highways or be water, all of that brings pressures for growth. This valley can't handle too much more than what we have. What we need is more water, but not more development. Okay, in conclusion, one, I agree with Paul. I think that the mayor's position really is just one of 5 votes, but they are first. The mayor is first amongst equals. They set the agenda, they chair the meeting, and they get to nominate people for boards and commissions. That's a very important job. I've got about 35 years of experience doing just that, so I feel like I'd be ready on day one. I'd like to close with, I've been talking about values-driven leadership, so I think you need to know a little bit about what my values are. So, vision. My catchphrase is, respect our past, prepare for the future. We are more than a beautiful setting. We are a real community. Some say we are Grover's Corners. If you know our town, Thornton Wilder attended Thatcher and supposedly to some degree was influenced by that experience when he wrote the play. He talked, the essence of that play was the simple yet meaningful lives of people. A place to, this is not Thornton, this is me, a place to reside with family, where children go to school and mature, where guests come to visit real residents and not make a visitation to Williamsburg, where the folks have to put on costumes in the morning and go downtown to let people know how it used to be. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out. I don't know what to say except thank you. I do have one really quick little story, though. I just love this. Every political season, I want you to take this away with you. In 1848, there was a barricade movement going, well, all across Europe was in revolution. And in France, they were throwing up barricades. Big crowd came rolling through, and a state legislator named Alexander Ledru Rollin said, "There go my people. I must follow them because I am their leader." Okay. Thank you.